MK. Well, welcome back to this initial installment for introducing you to a new contributor to my video hosting site. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that I've been very excited about this day. What today is an introductory day to a new person who's going to be joining MK Quilts on my hosting site to bring some new content to you. And I'm over the moon excited about where I am today, my contributor, and she was gracious enough to invite me to her beautiful home and her beautiful studio today. And so I want to take a quick minute. She's going to come back later, but I want to introduce you to Paula Cedarquist from Cedar Quilts. Hey,
hi.
This is Paula. Paula and I are both Minnesota girls, and I'm in Minnesota today in her beautiful studio. So she's going to come back later, but let me tell you what we're going to do today. So Paula is a long arm quilter, and she's going to give you all of her introductions and all of that in her own content. But what is really exciting for me is that Paula is a handy quilter owner. She also has Pro Stitcher. So what we decided to do today to start out our business relationship together is to take a block, and Paula had a friend who was nice enough to make a beautiful little 18-inch block for us.
Actually, I clotheslined it and made it myself.
Paula did it herself. She was working overtime. So what we thought we would do today is kind of approach the same block, but from maybe two slightly different angles. Okay, so you guys obviously know I'm a Pro Stitcher heavy girl, pretty much like 99%, right? So my approach to doing this block, slightly different than Paula's approach. Paula is a free spirit, free motion kind of a quilter. And so what we're going to do is we're each going to do part of this video, and then in the future we're going to put this up. Paula's going to have much more content to add to the hosting site. I am just over the moon excited for her to get her stuff out there. You probably have been following her for a while as well. And she's just going to have a new platform to reach many more people. We're going to be helping each other, and I'm really excited about it. So stay tuned, and I'm going to take you inside of simulation now, and I'm going to talk you through how I approached my block. We'll do a little bit of stitch out, and then we're going to turn it over to Paula and let her explain her approach to the block and watch her do some stitch out. All right, I'll meet you inside of simulation. I'll meet you right back here.
All right, so here we are, and what you're looking at on the screen, obviously a picture of this beautiful block that Paula pieced for us both to work on. So when she first sent me this picture of the block, I realized that the quilting on this could go a couple of different ways. If I was working on this in my studio and this was a larger quilt, not just a simple 18-inch block, the first way that I may look to quilt this is just with an all-over design, an edge-to-edge quilting pattern that we call pantographs. Now, Paula and I were going to highlight some of the ways that we quilt these in our respective studios. So I knew that she was going to do some free motion stuff in here. And so I decided rather than just approach this with a simple pantograph, I would approach it with my pre-planning method of using Handy Quilter's Pro Stitcher simulation software to plan out and lay out and audition some quilting designs, some digital designs to put on top of this block. So let me take you inside a simulation and show you how I thought through the process of this lovely block. All right, what you're looking on the screen right now is a picture of my software. And what you're looking at is a line drawing, an exact line drawing that represents that block. So the first thing that I do a lot of times when I'm planning a block or a quilt is I will create a line drawing to match that. I have a YouTube video that you can check out if you want to see my approach to building line drawings as visual representations to help me plan my quilting designs. But let's move on. So one of the first ways that I told you that I could quilt this was a simple pantograph design. And in my online class called Best Practices for Pantos, I show my students how to set up a pantograph such as the one you're looking at on the screen now, how to place that on top of the block or the quilt, and how to do some cropping to crop out the areas of this pantograph that would not be needed, and then all we would quilt was just edge to edge right over that block. Okay, so that's a very simple option, and again, if you're interested in learning more about my online classes, please head on over to mkquilts.com. But let's move on. We decided not to do a pantograph this time, so let's just go ahead and close that, and let's refresh so that we can get this on the screen. Okay, when I looked at this block, the first thing that I saw were these nice wide open blocks. I think they're about 6 inches finished. So what I wanted to do was create a block that was connected here in the center. So I had to search through my digital patterns and come up with a block that had the start and stop point on one of the tips. So as I open this block, you can see right there that the start and stop is out in one of the corners. And what I knew that that would buy me was the ability to connect those blocks so that I could stitch this block and it would continue right on and be connected right here and stitch onto this block. Because one of the things that I'm very frequently doing with my planning in simulation and my stitch out at the quilt is to figure out what can I connect so that I have the fewest number of start and stops. So here was that block as mentioned. I took 2 of them, I connected them together, and then I'm just going to go ahead and align these into the center of the block. Now, one of the things that I want you to be aware of as I'm planning out this block is that a lot of times when I'm using the simulation software, I'm actually just going for a loose design or a loose representation of what the stitch out is going to look like. So if you look at this block placement right here, it's kind of close to the edges of the block here, and it's a little further away from the edges of the block on the other 2 sides. I'm not really concerned about that in the simulation step because I'm going to go ahead and make those adjustments when I actually get to the quilt. But a lot of times it will help me to just loosely connect something, place it on top of my line drawing, and then it helps me to get a visual representation as to whether or not I even like the direction that I'm going. Okay, so keep that in mind as I fill in this layout. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's how I'm going to stitch it. It just helps me visually tell whether or not I like where I'm going with the design. Okay, the next area that I saw that was a block area that would be connected were these 2 long rectangles. And again, I saw that connection point right in the middle. I knew I wanted to do something fancy in these large blocks, and I knew that these areas, the small squares, I knew that those were dark fabric, and I would probably want to put a contrasting thread there. So I knew that I could make this a little fancier, I could make these areas a little fancier, which told me that I wanted to keep these rectangular areas a little bit simpler so that my eye would have a place to rest. Again, I chose a design that I knew that I could connect so that I could stitch it from one block right on into the next block. Okay, so that looked pretty good to me. Now the one thing that I'm not exactly sure about this pattern is the density. When I actually get to my quilt, I might decide to resize that a little bit or start over with a version of the pattern that is not so densely quilted. But for the layout purpose of this project, I really felt that this is the way that I wanted to go with this straight line stitching in the rectangles, so I could go ahead and leave this in for the purposes of layout and rendering, but when I get to the quilt, I will make that final decision about the density of that rectangle. All right, the last block then was this 2.5 inch, I believe it was maybe 2 inch finished block. And again, I wanted something that was connected there through the center. So I scanned my designs. I found this lovely orange peel that was connected in the center. It's not in the right orientation for that block right now, so I'm just going to go through and I'm going to rotate it, and then I'm going to go ahead and align it there in the center. All right, so as you can see, I just kind of broke this block down into segments, tried to find the parts of that block where there was clear connection points, pick patterns rather that would fit there nicely and allow me to connect that together. And then let's go ahead and look at my complete block as I decided to finish it. And there we have it. Just all nice and filled in. I like how that looks. And now I can proceed to take this to the quilt. So once again, my whole approach with quilting is very computer generated and very much a pre-planning kind of a method. I love the fact that I can use my simulation software before I'm even stepping up to my quilt to make some of the decisions about pattern and design and density, and then I can decide whether or not I'm even going to like that at the quilt. In days gone by when I did not have the simulation product, a lot of times I might be making some of those decisions at the quilt, and then I would start stitching, and then I wasn't really happy with it. And if you're a long armor, you know that once you start stitching, you're going to have to make some decisions about how poorly does it really look, and how badly do you really want to pick out those stitches. So I love the simulation software for that reason. It helps me make a lot of those decisions before I ever step up to put needle down on a project. Here, finally, what you're looking at on the screen is a representation of a different way to set those blocks. So in this particular exercise, we were really planning the quilting for the block. And if you look at the screen, here is one block, and I've just duplicated it and arranged those blocks in this manner for option number 1. And again, over here, here is the block, the exact same block. I've just duplicated them and laid them out in a slightly different way. So if I was actually planning to piece a larger quilt or a larger project with this lovely block, I could even use my simulation software to help me figure out how I might like to lay the blocks out and stitch them together. So the simulation package from Handy Quilter really can be used in a lot of ways. I love it. It has transformed the way that I quilt in my studio. And if you want more information about Handy Quilter products or the simulation package or any of my online classes, please go ahead and reach out to me. You can give me a call. You can check out mkquilts.com. You can, of course, check me out on YouTube, on my Facebook group called Pro Stitcher Sim Style, and I would love to become your Handy Quilter retailer to help you bring a long arm with Pro Stitcher home to your home or studio and teach you how to use this fantastic software from Handy Quilter.
Hi, Paula Jo from Cedar Quilts. Oh my goodness, if you've been following me for a while, you know this has been a special day that's been a coming, and it's here. Oh, I'm so excited. I have someone special in the house here today. My friend, MK.
Hey everyone, it's MK.
We have been following each other for a while, and we hit it off right from the very start. We're both Minnesota gals. She lives down in Florida now. And oh my goodness, we both use Handy Quilter. We both use some Pro Stitcher. I mainly do free motion stuff, but a little bit of computerized. And then MK is my other half. She's mainly computerized all the time with the Pro Stitcher Premium, and a little bit of free motion once in a while.
A little bit.
And
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and I am so excited that we've got these announcements we've kind of sort of been teasing you about for a while. But today we are going to be showing you our two styles of how we approach the same block. Now, I don't have time to do much piecing, but when I do piece, I like to do 9 patch blocks, and I like the disappearing 9 patch blocks. So I actually did this with some cherry wood and some batiks because those are my favorites. And I made 2 of them, and they're identical. And MK is going to do one, and I'm going to do one. And we're just going to show you how we puzzle things out and how we go about thinking and figure out how we're going to quilt it. And so anyway, yeah, it's going to be lots of fun.
All right, so you've seen how I planned this block out completely using my simulation package. And now I'm ready to step up to the quilt. So what have I done? I've taken that flash drive out of my laptop, I've plugged it into the machine, the block is loaded, and now what I plan to do is see if those units that I've pre-planned and pre-sized and pre-set up, I'm gonna actually see if I can use them on the quilt. I'm hoping that I can. There may be situations where the block is just not quite right, or it's a little wonky, it's a little crooked, and so I may have to do some additional setup at the quilt. But always remember, what I'm doing in simulation, I'm doing that ahead of time to make this process go quicker. So I'm hoping I don't have to redo things, but I might have to. Okay, so that's where I'm going to go next. Before I get into the stitching part of this, I'm going to bring Paula back in, and I want her to talk a little bit about what she does with thought process before she actually puts needle to fabric, okay? All right, here's Paula.
Hi. So when I am quilting, I usually have a bit of a plan, and it's loosely figured out most of the time, and then I actually look at the fabric and try to make my design fit into what is really there. With a disappearing 9 patch, I like the positive and the negative. So even though I like a lot of heavy quilting in some places, I like other places to not have hardly any stitching, and then that fabric will lift and pop, and oh my goodness, I love cherry wood. And so with a 9 patch block, I'm going to have these little ones probably pop, and I may or may not put anything in them. I'll save that till the very end and decide if I need a little something there. But I'm probably going to do something really cool in here, and so I'll probably take a picture on my sketch and figure out the best pathway that I'm going to go so that I can stay continuous the whole time. I've actually done a lot of disappearing 9 patches, so I know I'm going to start here, I'm going to come through here, I'm going to come all the way around. So I've got my plan there, and then, oh, I just love flowers. So I think I'm going to put some free motion flowers in the blocks, and then after I look at it and let it talk to me a little bit, I'll decide, oh, maybe I'll just put some leaves in here, just a nice open leaf so it still has a lot of pop. And yeah, and if I do a regular little squiggly thing everywhere else, this one piece over here of batik has a really cool design. So I might even do a little bit more of that design in there somewhere on my flowers and stuff. So
See, I actually think that that's very interesting that I've heard her talk through the process, because although it's different, I was thinking the exact same thing when I did my layout, wasn't I? I was trying to connect blocks together so that I had one large block rather than 2 or 3 or 4 small blocks. Why? Because I don't want to break thread. I want to have continuous line and connected points whenever possible. So even though we're approaching it differently, she's planning to pretty much free motion her whole block. I'm planning rather to pro stitch my whole block. There is very, very many similarities in how we were thinking about it, okay? So before I stitch, I want Lori. Lori's behind the camera today. She's our videographer for the day. I want her to come in a little bit closer because I want to point out a couple of things on Paula's machine today. And the first one is something I spotted right away, and it's this little washer that she has behind this nut or bolt right there. And what we have on the machine today is this new etched glide foot. Actually, it's not a new foot. It's the foot that Handy Quilter sells. But I have had it etched. And if you've been following me for a while, you know about the extra fee for the etching. You can go on MK Quilts and order those up. I have plenty of them in stock. But what caught my eye was that washer, because the glide foot is plastic and we don't want to put too much tension. We don't want to tighten that down too far. So I'm going to do that when I get home. I'm heading over to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, and I'm going to get one of those. That's a great, great idea. All right, so I'm going to move on. We're not going to get to the whole stitch out part today, but I want to show you one of the blocks that I created. It's already hooked together in my Pro Stitcher because I planned it that way. And I'm going to go ahead and see if it's going to fit in the block or if I'm going to have to recreate the block. I'm hoping I don't have to, but let's see if it's going to fit. Okay, I want to start doing some multi-point marking right now. And here's a tip for all you Pro Stitcher owners who don't have Infinity. Okay, Infinity owners know that we have multi-point marking capability on our handlebars. But for those of you who don't, if you have Avante or Fusion, you can assign the multi-point mark button to the new buttons that they've given us in Premium. And if you make your multi-point mark button the last one on the list, and if you get one of those little, it's like a little silicone or a little plastic dot, you can get them at Joann's or quilt shops. If you affix that little dot right next to where your multi-point mark is, you can hold your finger right by that little dot and click your multi-point mark without having to look back up and down, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this area and I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that the block fits. Okay, here we go. And Paula is a nice, tall, beautifully slender, beautiful woman. I am short in stature, right? So I am on my tiptoes right now. I wish you could see. It's kind of comical, actually. And what I'm doing is I'm using those new etched lines on my glide foot, and that is helping me to do my multi-point marking. I'm also using the hole that's on the inside of the glide foot. And if you have not ordered up a new glide foot, you might want to just consider ordering this new etched version from me because having that larger hole
Before you get to your last spot, you ask, your wish is granted here. I have something right here for you.
Oh my gosh. We did not know that this was going to happen.
Well, I actually had a plan from before and I forgot to do it before you started.
I love it when things like that happen. Okay, so Lori, if you can come in on the screen a little bit. You can see that it's kind of a unique shape with the marking, isn't it? And what I'm going to do, just to prove a point here, I don't think I'm going to be able to use skew functionality. Pretty certain that I'm not. But I just want to show you, if we go into Modify and we go into Skew, I'm going to try Skew 1. Well, oh geez, no, clearly that's not what we want. Let's undo that. And I'm going to do Skew 2. Well, clearly that's not what I want. Okay, I already knew skew wasn't going to work. But as I'm looking at this combined block, I'm pretty sure that if I just resize it a little bit, that it's going to fit. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to do Modify. I'm going to align it. And I'm going to align this into the center of my marked area. And if you've taken any of my layout and rendering classes, you know that basically what we do is area and alignment. So now that alignment is locked in the center, now I can go back to my resize button and I'm going to hope and pray that if I just resize that a little bit, that I'm going to get that block to be able to fit. It's a little bit off. Let's try to widen it without making it taller. Ooh, that looks pretty good. Now, I'm not exactly sure how well this is showing up on the screen, but I'm a little bit outside of my purple box in some of the areas. But here's the thing. When I'm doing a block like this with multi-point marking, I am specifically and purposely marking myself further away from my seam line so that I can do a little scooch it this way and scooch it that way. Paula told me that was a technical term. I could use that term today. So I already know that it doesn't fit exactly, but I've given myself wiggle room, haven't I? So I'm actually very happy with that block right now. What's the next step? I want you to stop and think. If you've taken my classes, you should know what the next step is. Anytime that we skew something or we've modified it or anything, oh, Paula's raising her hand.
I know.
Oh, she knows the answer.
Can I
Yes.
Baseline.
Baseline.
Woohoo!
And the further rule is we want to save before we stitch. Okay, that's an MK recommendation. Anytime you skew or modify something, save before you stitch. Just think about that a minute. I'm sure you can know how that's going to save you.
Good question.
Yes.
So if you baseline, isn't that saving it right there on the screen in the moment?
It is a quick save, and that's exactly how I like to think about it.
Yeah.
Now, in Premium and in the MK world, baseline works in some other ways. But when you're at your system ready to stitch, baseline is like a quick save.
Yes.
So I'm happy with baseline when I'm standing here. But let's just pretend for a minute. What if I start stitching and I have a power glitch, or I have a motor fail, or something happens with my Pro Stitcher, and I'm in the middle or 2/3 way of stitching.
She's so smart.
I
can see where it goes now.
I'm not going to be able to get that placement and the marking. If I've skewed it, I'm not going to be able to get that exactly the same. So it may seem like a step that you want to skip. I'm just going to tell you, you can skip it if you want. You're the boss of your quilt. But I recommend that you save before you stitch. Okay, so let's go ahead and baseline. We're going to save it. We're going to save it to its own unique name so that we have not modified the master, because likely we need that master block later. So how about we just call it, this is the center of our block. I'm just going to call it center and number 1. This is our first block out of however big our project is, and we're going to save. All right, I'm going to stitch this out. Now, I'm going to stand here at the quilt, and I'm going to just watch this stitch, and I might have to massage this a little bit that way or a little bit that way. Because this is a block to block type of a placement, I'm going to stand here. Sometimes if it's a border or it's a pantograph, if I've skewed it, I pretty much know it's going to stitch where it belongs on a border or a pantograph, but not on a block. I want to babysit a little bit on the block. Okay, here we go. We're going to stitch. We're going to go into we're going into Pro Stitcher Quilt, and we're going to check our settings. I'm going to want a tie off to start and end. I'm going to want to pull up. I do use the pull up auto function, so let's go ahead and use that. I've already checked my stitches per inch. I like to stitch with 13 stitches an inch. And Paula's got her speed on about a medium speed, so that should be good. And we're going to be off to the races. Here we go. Watch my little trick with tie off too. This is another little trick that I do with tying off. Whoops. Caught a little bit more of the thread there than I wanted to. I wasn't sure how fast Paula's machine was going to go. We'll go ahead and clean that up later. And I think I'm going to slow this down just a little bit. And look at how beautifully that's placed in there. My hand is right here, making sure that I don't cross over into my seam line. I'm really happy with this placement. I'm really happy that I didn't have to replace and resize this block. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and let this stitch out, and then we'll meet you right back here after it's done. And we'll bring Paula in because she's going to show you her free motion magic. All right, so if Lori can come back in a little closer and check out the stitching here, I'm actually very happy with this. Now, there's a couple places, if you looked really close, I got a little bit over outside of the seam there. And there was one other spot, maybe down here on this green, I got a little bit over. But you know what? Is it the end of the world? No. And if you've been following me for a while also, and you've watched my YouTube video on wiggle ditching, you probably know that I'm going to go through and do some wiggle ditching on this when all is said and done. And my wiggle ditching is a technique that I use that kind of hides a lot of little oopsies and sins and glitches and bobbles. If I want to try to cover that little area that I wasn't happy with, I'm just going to kind of wiggle ditch maybe a little tighter over that spot. If I got a little far away from a seam in a spot, well then I'm going to do a little bit of a wider wiggle ditch in that area. I just love wiggle ditch, and I use it a lot. So anyways, I'm not probably going to finish out all of this stitching today, but I will finish this out in my own studio, and Paula's going to finish hers out, and we'll put them all together in a beautiful project at the end of this video.
Oh, we do so many things the same. They're so similar, and yet they're very different. And that's the thing with people, and that's the thing with quilts. There are so many things that are similar, but as my mama always says, there's more than one way to skin any rat. So you like to do your wiggle ditching at the end. I like to stabilize first. I oftentimes do my ditches and my wiggle ditches right off the bat so that it looks so pretty, and then everything is stable. It's there, it's set, I know where things are. So if I'm going to be using a little bit of computerized stuff, I know that it's right there. I like everything stable on the sides with the clamps and things if I'm going to be using the computer, and even when I'm in the free motion. So when I'm first looking at this block and I'm letting it talk to me, I love the cherry wood fabric. It's a solid hand-dyed cotton, and it doesn't matter if I piece it right side up or upside down. I love cherry wood and batiks because I don't do a lot of piecing, and so when I do, I want to try to eliminate as many oopsies as possible. But I see all sorts of beautiful little designs and wiggles and things in here. So first thing I would do is I'm going to wiggle ditch as much as I can, and then I'm going to work in my boundary areas, and then I'm going to go back in and place my flowers. And I'm probably going to memorize my flowers and repeat them. And so I do use a little bit of that computerized stuff, but rather than going and trying to search and find and shop for a pattern that's going to fit perfectly, I'm going to use my own pattern. I'm going to memorize while I'm doing free motion, and then I'm going to computerize it so I can do all the things that MK was doing. I can flip it and resize it and reposition it and stuff because it's memorized and computerized in there, and I do rename it and I do resave it in my file, and then I can go back in and cedarize it by adding some more fill around it. So I like lots of options. So one of the things that I like to do is look at the thread colors and what am I going to do. Most of the time I want to just add texture. I don't want to have a lot of bling going on, but sometimes I like bling. So depending on what all I'm going to be doing, I might want, this is going to be the better navy. This one's a little too bright, so I'm going to get rid of that one. So this would be the navy I would use if I'm going to use it. I love my blues over here, but this is maybe not quite the, oh yeah, no, that's not too bad. If I want that blue to blend in, that one is going to be good. This variegated, I used to use a lot of variegateds, and then I went for a while without using any variegateds, but this one might actually be really nice in lots of places. Okay, so I might use that one. I definitely like the purple. This is going to be a little too bright. I don't want that one. This one might work. This has really small little speckles of all the colors. It's going to blend in on the green there. It's going to go. So this might be really good for my flowers to let them pop. And then we'll do some of those others for the background ones. Oh yeah. Okay, so we've got some fun colors. Question from the back. Yes, my dear.
So tell me, Paula, were you like me in the beginning about thread choice? Was it difficult for you to choose and like decide on a thread? Because for me, that was challenging in the beginning, and I've gotten much better, granted, but it's still sometimes I'm less like a little unsure about the color.
Well, yes, I would say yes, absolutely. I ask a lot of questions when I'm quilting for other people, and because I don't have time to piece, I don't do things for myself very often. So I always ask, so what do you want on your quilt? Do you want it to blend in and just be background and match as well as I can, or do you want it to kind of pop and zing? My price points change too on what I'm doing, whether I'm doing a simple or a standard or a specialty or a spectacular.
So if you're changing threads a lot, then you're going to price point that up a little bit.
Yeah, if I have to use a ruler to make a really perfectly straight line, that bumps it up the next category. If I can just wiggle ditch everything and don't need a ruler at all, then it's easier. I don't have to charge as much. If I'm using one color of thread and I don't have to change it all and I don't have to think, I just have to pick what's my favorite color, that makes a difference too. So yes, all those different levels are options, because sometimes people just, I just want it done, I want it to be pretty, and I don't care.
And
just
you
pick
decide
and choose, and yep, just do your magic and it's all fine. But yeah, I just want one color, and no, I don't want it to show a lot, or I do like variegateds or I don't like variegateds. there are so many options, and I need to know what you want or what your person
so we
is
are
gonna want.
we are similar in that because I did
Yes.
much the same thing. But my preference, if it's up to me, generally speaking, I like the thread to show. But I have to listen carefully to my client because some people don't. They want it to blend.
Yes.
And there's so many choices.
My previous handy quilter was a 16. It wasn't a sweet 16. It wasn't. It was one of those in between models, but it was a 16 and it was on a studio frame, and it loved signature thread, the cotton thread, 100%. And oh my goodness, I have gazillions, oodles of options. Of colors in that, but it was a little thicker thread, and I liked how it looked, and my machine loved it. It ran so nice. I could adjust that tension just beautifully. I could use the same bobbin on everything, and I could keep that tension just right. My Fusion doesn't like that thread as well, and so I've started using Madeira thread instead, which is a 2-ply poly. It's really thin and it's really strong. Oh, I love it. And they've added extra colors now lately too at our local quilt shop, Country Fabrics and Quilting here in Brainerd, Minnesota. And so I don't have as many colors as I used to have, but oh my, the colors that I do have just blend right in, and that thread is so nice and thin, it just sinks in. It's just like butter on there.
So I'm hearing a little difference, but a similarity as well because I love Omni. On both my Fusion and McFinity, they take Omni just like butter. And I'm kind of if you follow me, you know, I pretty much pump quilts through a lot in my studio, okay? I'm a production kind of a long armor. And if I have a thread that I can standardize threads in my studio, that's what I've chosen to do. A lot of quilters like to use a lot of different threads, but I've standardized, my machine loves Omni, and I got colors like galore.
Yes. And I used to use, Mother Goose. I love that color of thread, and that was my go-to for lots and lots of quilts. But yes, I used to use quite a few different brands and weights, and I changed them up a lot. But since I've been using my Fusion, I have found that the Madeira is the bomb. It's what my machine likes. I love it. And it's almost exclusively what I use now, unless somebody has something and I can't find just the right color, then I adjust for other things. But yeah, I find one thread that I like, that my machine is happy with, and that's what I go with.
Okay, make some more magic.
Oh yeah.
Can I come in and take a look?
Absolutely.
Because I was thinking of something as Paula was doing this. Wow. Oh, I'm so impressed and I'm so inspired.
So I finally decided, I made a choice out of all my options of thread colors, but we're going to go with a variegated thread. And it has the blues and the purple and the light blues and the dark blues, and oh, I just love it. It's going to be really pretty, and it'll blend in nicely on all the squares and show off really nicely in a few spots. And I might reserve my option to add a little bit of solid color at the end in a few spots. But anyway, we're going to start out with this variegated. So normally what I do at this point is I know what I'm going to do. I like the disappearing 9 patch, so I've used this a lot, and I kind of know what I want to do. But I usually take a photo of what I'm going to be working on and I put it into Sketch. I love Sketch. This is one of my favorite apps for planning. And so when I get in there, I'm going to, this was what the block looked like as just a 9 patch. We cut it in half and then we take it all apart and we put it back together. And now it's all fancy and looks really cute. So with Sketch, there are several different options of things we can use over here. I like using this little magic marker, and it can either be clear or kind of see-through highlighter. And I can change the color that I'm going to use, and I can change the size that I use. So I can draw, and it's kind of faded first, and then it comes a little brighter. And I can highlight that, and I can move it, or I can just delete it. I can change it to a different size, and I love it. Or I can highlight that and I can change the color. It's really cool. So anyway, it's a fun app. I can highlight that and I can delete it. Alrighty, so what I do with this is I plan, okay, where am I going to go when I'm stitching my ditches, and how can I go around here the best without crossing over too many times, and I can do it many times before I finally figure out exactly the path that I'm going to go. And so if I come along and then I go all the way around, and then I can stitch in here, I can stitch in here, and then I can stitch in here. Okay, and oh, I went too far, so let's just delete that part. Okay, and let's delete this part. Let's go again, but I can plan out my route, and I'm gonna, yep, let's delete that. I'm gonna come around here, and if you follow all the way around a square, then you come back to the same point you're at. Now I can make my line here, and I can do my squiggle, whatever I'm gonna do in here, and finish out my line, finish out my line. And now I'm gonna go around this big block again, and come back to where I was, and now I can finish out my squiggle and finish out my squiggle, and then I'm gonna do my little line and finish up my squiggle and finish up my squiggle, make sure that I finish that line, make sure I finish this line, then I can do my squiggle again and do my line and squiggle, squiggle, squiggle. Okay, and now you can see that I've got almost all my ditches squiggled, stitched, wiggle ditched, except for this one and this one. Whoa, move the whole thing. And this one. So that's going to be my best route for doing my wiggle ditching and my little meandering in my rectangles all in one fell swoop. So we're going to do that, and then we'll show you the next part. So the other thing that we can do in Sketch is we can use both numbers and drawings and change our colors and stuff. So however much detail you need to have so you can have it sitting back there while you're stitching to remember where you're going, this works really well. So number one, I know that I have to start up here, and I'm going to come around that block, and then I'm going to do my little squiggles and around that little block. Then number two, I'm going to go around, well, I'll go around this big block and then come down and do my squiggles, and then here's three to get the rest of those, and then I also have to finish off those last couple of corners for my wiggle ditch. Now I can plan even further, and I can figure out that I want a number 5 then after all my 4s and 5s. Okay, then I'm going to do my 6. I'm going to do my flower over here. If that one doesn't work out, I've got one more that I can memorize, or I can just duplicate that one, and then I can combine them and put them here. And anyway, you can plan it all out. And then we can also look at texture and things. How do I want to backfill and interfill and whatnot? But again, with the elements so that they all play nicely together. I've got that little wiggle ditch going, wah 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 there, and I've got this little meander over here, and again I've got that little wah wah going there, and then around my flowers, again I've got that nice little wiggle going, and then I can take a look at what do I want? Do I want to backfill just the outside, or do I want to infill in between there? And I can kind of look and see. And just like MK will do all of that planning on her sim style, I can do it on Sketch, or I can do it with magic markers on grid paper and graph paper and things like that. And yeah, so I've planned it out and look at it before I actually stitch it out. There you go. Okay, and now here goes the magic. Cross your fingers. Here we go. Ta-da! And if you've watched my other videos, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I oftentimes, the one thing that I'm really looking for when I'm stitching is I want to know where I want to start, and where I want to end up, because it's important to know where you want to end up so that you know where to go with the next spot. And so that's one of the things that I'm watching for. As I'm free motion, wiggling, all those things, I want to know where do I want to end up so that I can get to the next block and keep it going and keep it all very continuous.
So Paula talked about the starts and the stops. And if you think about the way that I laid out that block in my simulator, remember, I did this block and connected it, I did this block and I connected it right in here so that I could stitch this block. So again, there's similarities in the way that we approached it. Now, one of the things for me is that I probably am going to have a few more starts and stops than Paula. I'm trying to avoid them. I'm trying to make them minimal. But because I'm trying to do this almost exclusively Pro Stitcher, and because I can connect some things, but I can't connect others, that's kind of a thing, a trade-off for me. I want to use Pro Stitcher. I feel like I don't have these crazy, awesome, gifted free motion skills. So I kind of live with a few more start and stops. She can just free flow this and do it and make these decisions on the fly, and I just so admire people like that. This looks awesome. I'm really looking forward to how both of our things are going to turn out. Okay, I think she's got more to do.
And here I was thinking I end up stopping and starting so much because I'm in free motion and I'm oftentimes changing my thread colors and things. So I have been working the last couple of years on trying to be a little more continuous line so I don't have as many stops and starts. So that was just funny that you thought you had more, because I was thinking I have more. Oh, okay. Now, in my plan, I am going to do flowers in all these big cherry wood areas. They're nice and solid, so my stitching is really going to show up there. I could have been really fancy in my rectangles, but it wasn't going to show much there anyway, so I just did a really cute little meander, and I'll show you a couple of tricks about my elements later. But I want flowers here, and if I memorize the first one, I can memorize it and computerize it, and then I can do all the things that MK does with a design that she purchases somewhere. But I'm going to make it my own, and then we can cedarize it. So I want to memorize one flower first, and then I can flip it and turn it to the other one, and I can double it for in here. So I don't want to start here. I want to start over in this one or that one as a single, and then we can modify it and utilize it. These little squares, I'm going to keep them fairly open. I like a lot of positive and negative, some areas heavily quilted and some areas with very little quilting, so that it adds pop. And I don't know if you had noticed, but I have 2 layers of batting underneath this so that it has a little extra yumminess to it. So I'm going to turn on the computer again, and I'm going to memorize one flower here with an echo, and it's really important to have enough space between the element and the backfill. If you run the backfill right up to the element, you lose the pop. And I really like things to pop. So I'm going to turn on the computer and then we'll go from there.
All right, so where we're going to transition to now is one of those functions that Paula and I both use, but we use it in slightly different ways. And that is the record or the mark feature. Now, I use that a lot with my Pro Stitcher. And Paula and I have both talked about this wiggle ditching, haven't we? We're kind of soul sisters with the wiggle ditching, and we didn't know that until we met. But we both like that technique. But maybe you want to do straight line ditching. Maybe you want to do stitch in the ditch, straight line ditching. Well, you can do that through the record feature. So when I am done with this block, I'm going to go back and do the wiggle ditching. But if you want to do the straight line ditching, you're going to go into Pro Stitcher Record. In that menu are your mark features. We talked about having the little dot over here, so you can put this into Pro Stitcher Record, and now you have marking with your multi-point rather than area marking. So you could go along right in the ditch and you could just click, 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 click. And what you're actually doing is creating a stitchable line that is specifically placed on your quilt. Then you're going to stitch that out. Paula is going to show you her crazy awesome free motion skills and record some sort of, I think she's got a feather, nope, she's got a flower planned, and she's going to record all of that and save it. It's the same technology, it's the same mentality, it's just two different ways. I'm going to use it with my motors engaged. She's going to disengage the motors but still do record.
Okay, so we're going to turn on Pro Stitcher. That's the computerized part. And most of my training, even though I'm on a handy quilter and I'm using Pro Stitcher, most of my things are more of a technique rather than specific instruction on Pro Stitcher. So no matter what brand of quilter you have, a lot of my techniques are going to be useful no matter what brand you have. But anyway, I'm turning on the computer part, and then I'm turning off the gears. There's motors and gears, and it restricts my free motion. I want to be able to memorize, but I don't want the gears and the wheels and all those whirligigs and thingamabobs to be restricting the free motion. So I'm going to turn off the gears, and I'm still in the computer part. I'm going to go to record, and I'm not going to be using the mark on this. If I was doing straight lines, I would use the mark feature, and then you can even hit the jumps and then it'll go to the next spot. But the mark is for straight line things, and you mark wherever you want and it'll make a straight line in between there. But I am going to record in free motion. And when you do that, it's important to be where you want to be before you hit that button. Otherwise, it will record the movement of you getting ready and in place. And we don't want that. We just want to have a good starting spot. And then when we finish our design, we want to make sure we end in that same spot so that it can be computerized. When we're in free motion totally and not memorizing this, it doesn't matter where we stop and start, but if you are memorizing it so that you can computerize it and then use it as a regular design, it's really important to know where you're starting and where you're ending, just like I said before. So anyway, we're going to do my little signature happy flower and come back to the same spot, and we're going to have a little echo. So I've got my needle down, I've got my thread up, I'm locked into place. Now I'm ready to memorize. Oh, here we go. We're going to do a nice little stem. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come up to that spot. Do a nice little echo. And we want to end right where we stopped, and then we hit record again. And if I had my follow button on, I could see where I was going, but I don't like to see it as I'm going. I like to just do it free motion and then look at it when I'm done. Now, if I didn't like what I did, I still have another open single square, and I could memorize this one, name it, save it as flower and today's date or whatever. And then I could memorize another one and then choose the one that I like best. Or maybe I would sprinkle a few of both of them in the quilt or the pillow or whatever the project is. But anyway, this is going to be just a nice little flower there, and it stops and starts in the same place. So that's good. We're going to save that. And you probably don't want to watch me trying to do this because I'm not as good on the computer as MK. So if you want to learn how to do all those memorizing things, make sure that you get good training for your particular system, and watch MK if you've got a Pro Stitcher. So now at this point I have it saved and named and resaved and the regular part and everything. Now I'm just going to be doing free motion on my backfill. So I don't need to be computerized. I don't need to be memorizing. We're just going totally free motion again here. So if you come in nice and close and see what I have here so far, I have a flower that's fairly open with an echo, because you want that space, because we want positive and negatives. And I'm going to have we stabilized first, now we have our design, and now we're going to do our fill. And you need to have all of that in place nicely so that now we can go in and we can do lots of little circles and little squigglies. change my thread color a lot because I like to be able to see things, and I tend to change my feet quite often as well. So one of the things that I do is I keep my little Allen wrench really nice and handy on another one of my big magnets. I like magnets. I have a big magnet over here, and I've got a lot of my handy dandy tools over there, and this Allen wrench has a specific spot where it's always at. And so I'm just going to loosen up my glide foot. These etched glide feet are so nice for lots of things, but I can't see through it when I am doing free motion, and I need to be able to see things really well. So I am going to put on one of my feet. Oh my goodness, and MK brought a couple of different things for me that I had ordered, but my regular foot is what I'm going to put on because I can see really well with this regular hopping foot. And I'm not using any rulers, so I don't, I just want to be able to see what I'm doing. If I'm using ruler work though, oh, this new tall wall foot, they call it what? They call it the sure foot. But this tall wall is wonderful for using with rulers. But today, I just want to be able to see when I'm doing all these little backfills because I can't see through this. So we're just going to put this back on. And I have a little washer on here that is very, very nice for the plastic feet, the glide feet. It helps to distribute the pressure evenly so that you can tighten it up a little bit. But I leave it on all the time for all my feet because I have the quick release foot system. If you have the older system, you had to take the screw completely out and then thread it back in. But anyway, now that I've got all these quick feet, I can just leave that little washer on there all the time. It's so nice. Put my Allen wrench back where it belongs because, I'm kind of artsy-fartsy. I don't always do things the same way twice, and so I really have to remind myself to be thorough about something. So I put it back in exactly where it's supposed to be. So now I couldn't see where I was, and I couldn't get up to my echo line very well. So now I'm going to go back and put a few more circles around my other circles and get it up nice and close to that echo line. One thing to keep in mind when you have a lot of extra poof and you're filling in a backfill, when you're doing those fills, think of it as spreading frosting. And if you have your outline stabilized and then you're doing your fill, you can contain things a little bit better. So I don't want to just go in a real straight linear line. I want to be a little bit back and forth and kind of swooshing in and out, just like spreading frosting. There we go. So now when we look at this block and we have some positives and some really poofy areas and then some flat backfills, it really pops right up off the fabric. And I love that. I love that look of background fills and then the design with some of these same elements. My meander has that wah-wah to it. My flower has that wah-wah to it. My wiggle ditch has that wah-wah to it. So even though there are lots of different designs, meandering and wiggle ditch and flowers and backfills, there is a similarity and yet a difference to it. And when you're looking at artistic quilting, that's really important to have enough things that go, wow, look at me, and then enough things that play well together. So yeah, if you take my classes, we'll talk more about that. So I like my flower. I like the fact that there's lots of pop and then there's really heavy fill here and then it's just kind of medium in here. So I like the variety of the texture. I love that. And then I saved it and I named it and I duplicated it and I, did all of that, and it takes me, 4 times longer than MK, but I got it all done on here. But now that I've got it on here, I don't like those stems. They're too straight for me. That's too straight for me. So instead of doing them next, I'm going to memorize one more flower over here in this other corner, and I'm going to purposely make sure that I've got more of a curvy stem on that one. And then if I like that one, that's the one I'm going to duplicate for these. So give me a second, I'll be right back. Okay, so again, I'm back in computer. I'm going to take the gears off again. I'm all locked in place where I want to be. And yep, we got good wiggle going there. And I'm going to record and do this all over again. Oh yeah, I like that much better. And I've got my stop and start pretty close there. And yeah, that's going to be good. Okay, so I did a second one and it has a much curvier stem. I'm probably going to unstitch that little dab there and bring that up in there because it's free motion and I can fix that. And this is such a small project. I'm just going to finish out the rest of these flowers all by free motion and show you just how quickly this happens here. So a little more magic. And did you see that? I didn't go in the same direction that time. And oh no, sometimes I started on the outside and sometimes I started on the inside. That's the thing about us artsy, craftsy, artistic people. Yeah, I'm random. I don't always do it the same way twice. But that's okay. And that's one of the things with my classes that I'm going to be teaching. I'm not your typical teacher. I'm not concrete sequential. I don't always do everything the same way. I don't finish my thought before I start the next thought. And that's going to drive some of you nuts. It's just going to drive you absolutely crazy. But that's okay. Because, you know, those of us who are really artistic and kind of random, oh my goodness, we cannot think concretely and sequentially too long, and we're just going nuts. So anyway, I'm a different kind of teacher, and I bet you know some more people like me who would maybe benefit from taking some classes from someone like me. So anyway, even though we sort of kind of do the same thing, we do it in a totally different way around, and I can do it in many different ways around. I don't have to do it the same way. Anyway, if you could benefit from watching and learning and seeing someone who thinks like I do, if you have someone in your life, yeah, let them know about me. Come to mkquilts.com and look up the video training store and look for Paula Jo Cedar Quilts, the random silly goofy gal. Yeah, with the crazy magic artistic stuff. I'm going to add an extra little wiggle on this leaf because I want to. And I can because it's free motion. Oh yeah, I like that. I like that so much, I think I'm going to add that to the other one. Yeah, I think I will. Ta-da! And I'm going to go and do that in these other two. And where's my scissor again? I moved my scissor. I can't find it when I move it, you know. All right, and then we're going to go down here and get these. And I don't have to talk to the computer or wait for the computer or reposition the computer. I have a love-hate relationship with the computer. I love it, but oh, it's just not fast enough for me. My head goes way faster than my speaking does or my typing does. So yeah. See, I've got that all done before I could have even possibly had that up and done and positioned and whatnot from the computer. So yeah. In some ways, it's way faster for me to just do it free motion. On the other hand, sometimes I can take a long time just listening to the quilt, making a decision. Yeah, but that's okay, because that's the way my mama made me, and yeah. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming, MK. This has just been so much fun. I want to thank you and Mr. MK for inviting me into your quilting community and having me on your site. I am so looking forward to teaching some classes again and having this opportunity and this platform. So thank you for coming.
You are most welcome, and thank you for having me out again today. And I am just as excited as you are, because really I have to thank my husband Paul for this. I mean, he really is my driving force behind my business, and he believes in community. We're small town people. We're Minnesota nice, and we believe in community, and we have a great community in Florida, and I want to build my quilting community with great people. And I think you are the perfect one to come on with us now.
Well, I think that we have so many things in common, and we really like to be a blessing as we go, and share our knowledge and our love for quilting, and to keep it fun and enjoyable. So
absolutely,
I think it's going to be a very good.
I do too.
Very good blend.
I do too. So keep watching. Thank you for coming along with us this time. And Paula and I had so much fun today, and we were working hard, but we didn't finish our project.
We ran out of time. We're not quite done. So I am going to cut them apart right now, and we're going to send your piece home with you.
I will take mine back to Florida, and I'll finish it up with my Pro Stitcher, of course. Paula will do her free motion magic.
Do my magic.
And I'll send it back up to her so that we can get some pictures, and of course put the tag on the end of this video.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody, from MK to you, happy quilting.
And toodaloo. See